Atula Manvaduge and Professor Vasantha Perera is not a stranger for us to PIM, but those who are joining from the other universities, I welcome all of you as well. So let me introduce our resource persons for today's information session. Professor Manavaduge and Professor Vasantha Perera is from University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce. So they are very senior professors in our university, and they are like collaboratively working with us to introduce this national research pitching competition. Our plan is to select a few candidates for the global competition. Actually, Professor Atula Manavaduge and Professor Vasantha Perera are the ambassadors for the global body. They are representing Sri Lanka. So it's a great privilege for us to have a collaboration with both of you, sirs, in order to make this event success, right? So then again, I warmly welcome all the participants to this occasion, right? So they will be, Professor Atula and Professor Vasantha will explain you the process. Please understand it. Actually, what we are trying to do is to select best Sri Lankan presenter for the global competition. So regardless of what institute that you are coming from, it's not a matter of any way for us, right? We want to select the best, right? So keeping that opening remarks, I would like to hand over the session to Professor Manavaduge and Professor Vasantha Perera. And from the PIM side, we have Dr. Sakuntala Duraratnam and Mr. Jayanthani Unnella. They will be cooperatively working with you all. And I wish that all of you will learn a very comprehensive way of pitching your research from them. And I think that you will be able to compete in this global competition and represent Sri Lanka to keep our flag up. Thank you all. And Professor Vasantha, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Atula.
Thank you, Dr. Nilakshi. Thank you very much for kind introduction. So this is how actually we are going to conduct. Actually, the Professor Vasantha will have the introductory session that we are going to finish within 45 minutes. And afterward, actually, our main resource person are going to join with us. That is Professor Robert Pfaff. So once he joins, this session going to convert into a question and answer session. So everything depends on the question raised by you. So I mean, we hope that you have watched the video as well as go through the material that we have provided earlier. And based on that, we expect you to participate actively in this the second session, that is question and answer session, that is going to be chaired by Professor Robert Pfaff. Okay, so over to you, Professor Vasantha.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good morning, all of you. And Dr. Nilakshi has given a nice introduction about myself and Professor Atula. And also we welcome Dr. Sakuntala on behalf of Postgraduate Institute of Management and the technical staff, and also the students who are willing to get the benefit of this important concept, pitching research. This is the first time that we are conducting in the Sri Lankan context. So we hope to cover the first part of this session within 35 to 40 minutes, and then we move to the second session, entirely the question and answer session, which is based on the international competition as well as the local competition. So then I'll straight away share with my screen with you, which contain a lot of useful information, very brief way. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Okay, right. So the National Pitching Research Competition, we simply call it NPRC 2021. So presented by Professor Vasantha Perera, myself, and I'm a country coordinator of this International Pitching Research Competition. And Professor Atula Manavaduge, he's a research ambassador of the Pitching Research Competition, Pitching Research Concept from the Sri Lankan perspective. And we have done a couple of sessions for the Sri Lankan University and we cannot cover the other universities too. Particularly, we did some selected universities this concept. But anyhow, this is a competition. So we are trying to give an overview about this framework. Okay, so these are there are three main goals we are trying to cover from this introductory session. First half, I'll give a very brief introduction about the pitching research framework we simply call PRF, tool developed by Robert Puff. So the Robert Puff is currently working as a professor in finance at the Bond University in Australia, who is, as Professor Manwadi clearly mentioned, that he's going to join with us at 10:30 with this session. Hope that you can get the most benefit by asking a lot of clarification questions. He has sent a couple of presentations in advance to you. I hope that you have read and come because you are a SDR students. And the second part of this slide provided general information related to the National Pitching Research Competition. And finally, I'm not going to talk much about the Global Pitching Research Competition. Professor Robert Puff will elaborate, and also Dr. Malik also come in as observer. He's also from Queensland Business School in Australia. He's also joining with us. It's a great opportunity for us to share the international experience. And moving to the first goal of my presentation, here I want to give a very brief explanation about PRF. The PRF is Pitching Research Framework, which is developed by Professor Robert Puff in 2015. Look at his first paper. This concept or this template was initially developed by Professor Robert Puff. He published this concept one of the international conference in Australia, AFANS. And if you are in the accounting and finance area, this conference is a well-known conference you must know about as a HDR students. So if you go through this, his initial concept, he mainly focused on the finance and accounting area in 2015. And he says, actually, this is a very simple new research tool, new research planning tool. Actually, is a very good template for HDR students, which contains a two-page document. You have to prepare a two-page document with preliminaries. That means that particular template contains basically three parts. Number one is preliminaries. It gives an overview. And the second one is a core concept, core pitch. And the last one is a supplementary pitch, which gives the additional thing you have to, when you plan your research, you have to think about. So hope that everyone should read this paper first, okay, before engaging the template competition. Go to his Google profile, Robert Puff, where you can upload, download this paper from his Google profile, Google Scholar profile. So everyone should read this paper, what pitching research is initial paper. And then move to the second one. If you're willing to present a very good pitch related to your field, first of all, you must read this one, the published in Social Science Research Network 2021, the title called Pitching Research, available at Social Science. So everyone who are willing to submit the national contest, national pitching research competition, and planning to submit a good pitch for us. So first of all, you must go to the Social Science SSRN and download this one and read it at the initial state. So this is must. This is the first reading that you have to do it. And the second one, I'll take it, and also the Robert also take it this his presentation too. This the cartoon. The cartoon we extracted from PhDcomic.com. It's a very common, very popular among the PhD students. PhD, PhD comic. So this cartoon really implies the issue why Robert Puff has introduced this kind of template to the research students, particularly the HDR students. So if you go through this cartoon, you can see there are two characters in this cartoon. So the very old person is wearing a glasses and with beard, and he seemed to be a little bit grumpy, you know. And another character, you can see the young person, and who's always in front of him. So we can guess this should be the PhD students and also the supervisor. So if you go through these cartoon characters, what you can understand, the students have written, normally what has happened at the early stage of your PhD, you try to convince everything to your supervisor. So don't forget that your supervisor is a very technically sound person in your area. So if you are going to communicate with your research idea, maybe your research proposal with someone who doesn't know anything, so you are trying to say in a very simple way, but you are going to communicate with your supervisor, is a very technically qualified person. So you should know how to communicate it. You are not going to tell everything. Look at that, the last section of this cartoon, a bunch of papers that the students have written. I think the supervisor cannot understand it probably. He said what it probably means. Okay, so it implies at the early stage of your research, where you are at the planning stage, proposal development stage, your communication is very important. It's all about communication. You should have a good communication with your academic experts. We call it supervisor. It may be your principal supervisor, it may be your second supervisor, maybe another supervisor. I know that some students have 2 supervisors and some students have 3 supervisors. So therefore, whoever you communicate your research idea, so you must precisely and up to the point, and using correct jargons, you have to communicate it. Effective communication is the most important thing related to your research idea or research proposal. So keep in mind, this is the most important thing, the communication. And when it's come to the research template, so you can see this research template help you to effective communication, your research proposal or your research idea with an academic supervisor. So that's what Robert has planned. I said that with that cartoon, we identify the issue. The Robert Puff has tried to solve this issue by introducing a very valid, very useful, the template. So it has a multi phases, you know, it has different values, but at this stage, we are looking at the research planning tool. So you have to use, even if you take this, the lecturers, maybe the supervisors, they can use this as a teaching and learning method, you know, tool. So, but anyhow, in this particular competition, we are trying to measure how you are going to communicate your research proposal or research idea with an academic expert or your supervisor is a technically qualified. That's the assumption that we are making. Okay, so then I'll move into the second one. It gives the brief introduction about the sample of the template. It says a methodological mindset. So here you can see the top of the template, you have to mention your name, your pitchee, your supervisor, your pitcher, and your supervisor become pitchee. Okay, so your pitcher, you have to indicate your name in the template, and also FOR, field of research, whether you are coming from accounting, your discipline is most important, and the date completed this template. And this template contains the 11 items, A to K. The first 4 items, A to C, we give some preliminaries. That means it gives some overview about your research project, research ideas. And from E to J, mostly focus on your research project. It is a macro perspective of your research. You have to indicate, convince your idea, research idea, in related to particularly your research project in a very brief way. Out of that, the 3 concepts given here, the idiot guides, you can see the core aspect of any empirical research project. Idiot guide, idea, data, and tool, where you can contribute to the research field. Sometimes you can contribute to idea, sometimes you can contribute data and the tools too. That is the most important thing. Then you can see other part too. So I'm going to explain little by little, but don't expect the inside things during this very short period. Hope that you can get more inside information by asking questions at the question and answer session. Particularly, you must raise question related to the template at the Q&A session. Please ask, because the inventor of this template is also participating. And this is a very methodological. It starts from 4 items, and then it's go to the 3 items, E to G, and then it's go to the 2 items, and then it's go to the 1 item, and additionally, it's look at the 1 plus. Look at this 4, 3, 2 plus 1. So for first 4, if you take the first 4 indicate overview of your research. You know, it's give a big picture about your research. The title, basic research question, key papers, and motivational puzzles. So then we come to the third, that is the core area. So here you can see this particular template we can apply particularly for empirical research. So non-empirical research, you have to think about that. So that's what he mentioned, the key core concept of empirical research project. So then it elaborate your research idea. You have to have a good research idea. The data you have to be elaborate, and also the tool that you are going to use. And the second, it's countdown, right? 4, 3, 2. 2 is the most important thing. So every researcher, every supervisor asking, what's new in your research? As a there is noise come from your side, student participant. Please mute your mic, otherwise it's very difficult to continue this session. Okay, so the key question asking, what's new and so what? So this is most important thing. As a HDR student, you convey some new research idea. That's what we are expecting. And if you are saying new, you have to justify, so what is new? Okay, that is the most important thing. You say this is a new idea, but you say without having proper justification. So what? Without having proper justification, it's not well. And also the contribution. Every research you already learned under the research methodology. So you have to make a bottom line contribution, bottom line objective of the every template is the contribution. Contribution is the most important thing. In addition to the contribution, you can see the +1. The +1 mean the +1 mean you can see when you plan your research, you have to think about the other consideration, particularly the risk related with your research. Maybe if you have to take it, the ethical clearance related to your research. So is there any possibility that you can get the data, the planned data? So that's kind of thing you have to think about at the early stage, even the publication, which kind of a journal that you are publication, planning to publish your research. You know, that's also you have to think about at the planning stage of your research. So that's we take it as other consideration. So here you can see, so this particular template include everything. If you properly write this template, I think it won't be a big problem for your research and your expected results at the end as a HDR students. And this indicate some guidance related to the word count, because as you know, this is a 2-page document, which average word is 1,000. So you can't go beyond the 2-page. It's strictly into 2-page, but total average word is 1,000. So you can see here, I give the title, you can use 10 to 12 words. So you don't go beyond 12. And the basic research question, you have to indicate using 20 to 30 words, and even you can measure using the sentence, 1 or 2 sentences using. So very precise way you have to indicate all the things. You are not going to elaborate. That's what you have to learn. Read more, read more, read more, get the essence and put into that. So that's what we are expecting. Your academic supervisor is a technically expert. He knows that what you are writing, if you write in a simple way, very precise way, the advanced concept, he knows. Because I believe every supervisor is a very technically qualified person. He is related to your field, not related to, he can understand this one. So even if you go through the other part of also, we are giving the certain word limit for this template or the dot points as well. So I think you are HDR students, you can study by yourself, even if I do my PhD time period. So my experience also, I did my entire project independently by myself. So I did preferences, I refer the article and everything I did by myself. And if I have an issue, then I go to the supervisor and clarify it. So at the early stage, we are encourage you to the self-learning, independent learning from this contest. And now we are moving to the presentation. This presentation prepared by Professor Robert Puff. I asked Professor Atula to prepare. It takes 9 minutes. Then you can get entire idea of this concept. Professor Atula, could you please?
Yes, I will share.
Sound doesn't come from. Okay, good.
Yeah.
It didn't share.
Give me a second.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Robert Pfaff, Professor of Finance at the University of Queensland Business School.
Is it okay?
Okay, go ahead, Professor.
Okay.
You'll come to know me as the pitch doctor. Researchers make systematic and rigorous inquiry into things. It is immensely rewarding and important work, but definitely not easy. New researchers often have trouble getting started and maintaining focus in a sea of information. Supervisors are there to help, but their time is limited. Wouldn't it be great to have a systematic method for keeping yourself on track and getting the most out of the time you have with your supervisor? The pitch template is designed to distill your idea down to the key elements, making it easier to first clarify your own thinking and then to communicate to others. Identifying and articulating the essential details helps to start a conversation, allowing you and your supervisor to get the most out of the research process. You can also use the pitch template as a way to quickly deconstruct and record the important elements of research articles you are reading. Using the pitch template to reverse engineer the research of others will give you excellent knowledge of the leading approaches in your field. The pitch template is a living document that can and should be updated as you hone your ideas. It is designed to shape your thinking around what is most important and guide you from initial stages to final write-up. Let's take a look at the key areas of your research that are identified and outlined in the pitch template. What is the pitch template? First, your project needs a meaningful classification. Start by providing a working title and some key information on the research problem and background. Your working title will probably change over the life of the project. To start with, think short, 8 words or less, and informative. You can make it seductive and searchable later on. Next, you need a key research question, the overarching question that guides the research. When you are framing your research question, try asking yourself these questions. What is your overarching discipline? Is it finance, marketing, etc.? Start at the top and funnel down through smaller and smaller sub-disciplines to position your problem within a precise area. What is your paradigm? What is the broad field you are positioning your problem in? That is the philosophical perspective. And what are the underlying assumptions and language required for this paradigm? What is your focus? Are you pursuing a descriptive, predictive, or analytical approach? In the next section of the template, you identify key research papers. Choose the 3 key articles that have most helped you clarify your thinking. These may change across the course of your research project, but it is important to always have an understanding of how you plan to fit your research into the broader literature. Next comes motivation. In this section, you explain what are the scholarly factors driving your study. Motivation can come from real-world phenomena, the requirement for a new theory or model, or stakeholder needs. How should I organise my research thoughts? It's as easy as 3, 2, 1. Now that you have defined and positioned your research problem, you need to focus on the key specifics of how the research will be conducted. 3. There are 3 basic building blocks: idea, data, tools. Your idea is a central statement that connects your research question and your motivation, and, if possible or relevant, hints at your central hypothesis. It should be a statement that provides insight into the idea as a whole. Next, you consider your data. When thinking about data, there are 2 areas to contemplate: what you need and what is possible to reasonably access or collect. With data, we can think of it as having a demand side and a supply side. On the demand side, what data do you need to answer your research problem? Is it possible to collect the data you need? What sample will be required? What sample size will be adequate, and what will be desirable? The supply side. What data are available? Is it possible to access? Who needs to supply the data, and is this viable? Are there ethical or other constraints to producing the sample? The data section of the template will help you assess the feasibility of the project, as well as highlighting issues that may need to be worked out with your research mentor before you start your data collection. Tools. Again, think about tools in terms of what you require and what is available. Think of it from the demand and supply side again. Demand side. What tests, tools do you require to answer your problem? Tools can include software programs, materials for data collection, etc. How will you access these tools? Supply side. What tools do you have access to? Are there other people or organisations that could facilitate access to tools that you require? 2. There are 2 key questions. The first question is, what's new? This is your chance to show the novelty of your project, why you're excited about it. Is it the first to achieve something? Does it solve a problem? The second question is, so what? This section is about why the research will be important to others, especially to your academic tribe. Think about the implications for the discipline and key stakeholders in the motivation section. What will change once someone reads your paper? Will they think or act differently? 1. There is one bottom line. The bottom line is contribution. Think broadly about the contribution you are trying to make to the existing research and write an overall statement that encapsulates what you hope to achieve. Other considerations. This section is for any other issues that will have a bearing on your research. What are your target journals for publication? What are the research-related risks? Is it possible someone else is already conducting your research? Are there risks associated with the research process itself, such as ethical concerns or feasibility issues? Finally, think about what role your personal assumptions and expectations could play in the outcome. Avoid designing a test that almost certainly will give you the answer that you desperately want to be true. Your approach should be objectively scientific, that is, open-minded and inquisitive, rather than aiming to confirm your personal faith. Now that we've gone through the pitch template, what can we conclude? First, the pitch template provides a simple and flexible tool to guide you through all important considerations when conceptualising and designing a research project. Second, by taking the time to methodically work through each section and keeping within the guideline of 1,000 words, you will have all your thoughts organised succinctly for a meaningful discussion with your mentor. Remember, less is more, and by using the template, structured less is even more. Third, over time, using the template will make you a more efficient and effective researcher. You'll be able to conceptualise and define aspects of a proposed research project more quickly, giving you confidence. You'll also develop an understanding of your own research strengths and weaknesses. This knowledge will form the basis of your program of skill development. Most importantly, you will be able to optimise the time you have with your research mentor, ensuring each meeting moves your research project meaningfully forward, even when your research mentor is time poor or grumpy. For more information on the pitch template, go to the SSRN and access the latest version of pitching research at the following web address, and also the web portal pitchmyresearch.com.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Dr. Vasant. Yes.
I think we get very useful information from his animation, and he clearly mentioned, remember, less is more. Less is more. Even though you give a less words and less number of pages about your whole research project, it contains more valuable things, the more valuable things. That's what he said, the less is more. That is, you have to keep in mind. And then I'll move into the another slide. So it's clearly mentioned about the additional premier video. So if you are a the newcomer to this concept, better to go through this video by yourself and learn. So that's available in this web link. So you have to go to this. This is also, you can refer, and then I'll go to the next slide. It indicates 1,000 words. I said that every 1,000 words, but the competition, you can go up and down. It can vary by 20%. It can be good, but you can't change the number of words. It's 2 pages. But earlier I mentioned, even the Robert also mentioned, your template contains of 11 items. But when you are going to evaluate you, so we are going to take these 5 golden rules: the clarity, clearness, the meaningful pitch, and genuine effort, and the connectivity is the most important. You can see in this template, each items in the templates are interconnected. That connectivity is the most important thing. And finally, it helps you to communicate very effectively with your supervisor. So finally, you can see the conversation. That is the most important thing. So later on, also, I'm going to emphasize this point under the evaluation criteria. Okay. Then come to the second goal of my presentation. I want to give an overview about the NPR, National Pitching Research Competition, information, instruction, and timeline. So we already send you this e-flyer to you. Actually, everything is include this e-flyer, but I don't know whether this e-flyer has gone to everyone. I hope that your coordinators has sent to you. So if you go through this e-flyer, so very precise way, you can get the more information related to the local pitching competition. So even though I prepared a couple of slides related to this, you can see this is a national pitching research competition. It's a Sri Lankan version of global research competition conducted by Inspire Global Research Network. So we use the PRF, Pitching Research Framework, developed by Professor Robert Puff. So we got an idea, okay, basic idea. And also, you know that this is the first time I mentioned earlier, I must thank to the Postgraduate Institute of Management taking the initial responsibility and disseminate this valuable template among the Sri Lankan HDR students. First of all, I must thanks to PIMA taking the initial step. So, and also I must thank the University of Jayawardhanapura. So I belong to the University of Jayawardhanapura Faculty of Management, myself and Dr. Atula too. So the institutions, university also help us lots to this concept, and you can deal with this concept, PIMA, linked to their annual research conference called PIMARC. So one thing you have to keep in mind, one thing you have to keep in mind. So even though it's a local competition, this local competition organized according to the global norms and standards set by the Inspired International Research Network. It doesn't matter whether it's a local or international, the similar norms. I'm sorry that my dog is barking. Then come to the NPRC eligibility. So basically, this competition we open for the HDR students. HDR students, particularly the PhD, DBA, and MPhil lead into PhD. When you are reading MPL, doesn't matter because this is by research. You are a research student. So the field is very strong. That means we have to emphasize is the field of management. Okay, specifically we mentioned that we open this competition for the students who are currently studying in the Sri Lankan universities. So if you are under these categories, you are eligible for NPRC, National Pitching Research Competition. And the submission process, NPR entry submission process, basically we need, if you go to the template, you can see we ask only field of research, your name, that's it. In addition to that, we need your personal and demographic information like name, email, your university employment, things like that. But I have to mention, you are contesting for the standard pitching of this global category. So this is called standard pitch of new research ideas, because you are HDR students, you always try to produce a new research idea or new research proposal. That's a common one. So I know that the global pitching research competition, they have a different category of competition, but we groom for the students, we targeting our students for the standard pitch. Please keep in mind that too. And after submitting, when you are come to the submitting stage, so you can straight away go to the this link. This link is Inspired Global Research Network. Straight away go to the pitchingresearch.com and click event and competition tags. You can submit, but I think you have to register for that. Here I given some information that website. So here you can see the event competition, click it, you can get the information, but mostly you can get the global information, but you can submit because we have to submit all the pitch, all the entries to the global network. Even you can use for the start pitching also, that's fine. Ultimately, it goes to the submitting stage. And when it comes to the how will be NPRC executed? So I already mentioned it's a 2-page template, 100 word. It can be varied by 20%. So you know that. The second one is up to the grand finale, finalist, we evaluate you based on your written pitch only. We are not going to take your presentation. Okay. So we select you based on your written pitch, the quality of the written pitch, not only the presentation. But when it's come to the grand finale, so we are open for your presentation part too. Okay, so you have to make it 10 PTTs for a 10 minutes presentation maximum. Within 10 minutes, you communicate the audience to your research idea. But you are using the PRF, Pitching Research Framework, developed by the Robert Puff. So the final, assume that you are going to select the winner of this one. We are totally selected based on your written and oral pitch, both together. Not only for the written part, but also we are looking at the oral pitch aspect as well. So this decided by the international and local judging panel. And sometime if there is any changes later on, we can inform you. But keep in mind, if you are selected as a winner, you are straight away eligible to present your pitch at the semi-final stage of the global. That is the another value added that we are getting. Okay, so assume that you are winner of this pitching competition, you are eligible to present straight away to the semi-final stage of the international pitching research competition. Okay, that's a benefit that you are getting. And another thing I want to highlight here, so after presenting your pictures at the final, you can't change. Okay, the same pitch that we are presenting for the international competition. Okay, for example, after presenting your pitch, assume that you selected as finalist. So the same pitch that we are sending. So you are not in a position to change. But before that, you can work with your supervisors, get ideas, anyone. But up to the submission stage, after submitting, so you are not in a position to change. Okay, the award and prize we have given in the brochure clearly. I think the PIM may take good initiative to giving cash award too. But in addition to cash award, we are planning to give a certificate, particularly for the finalists, internationally recognized certificates. Okay. And the assessment process, this is the most important thing. The earlier also I emphasized this point, how we are going to assess you. So as I said that the target is Pichi. Pichi is your academic expert, your supervisor. How we are going to effectively communicate your research idea or your research proposal to an academic expert, particularly your supervisor. Okay, that is we are going to look at how clear is that, how meaningful is that, how effort is that, connectivity and the conversation, the communication ultimately. So these are the same criteria used by the international pitching research competition. The same thing. So 99% we are using the same thing, only the categories will slight change related to the local. So I think you know the assessment criteria, though you are prepared the template using 11 items. So we are going to evaluate you in this. Okay, at the starting I said that you are going to communicate your supervisor is a technically expert. We are going to look at your pitch, whether it's very effective or not. Okay. And then come to the important dates of your local. So today, 9:30, we start the information session through the online. And from today onward, the pitching is open. Okay, so even tomorrow also you can submit. Don't submit tomorrow, take a time. So it's going to be submission date, deadline is November 1st. You are given 1 month exactly. So during that time, you can do some desk work. I think some students already know about your research, So there are the different stages. Some, if you are just started your PhD, you have to do a lot of things. But if you're started maybe 2-3 years earlier, you have done your literature reviews and everything. So it doesn't matter. So your deadline is November 1st. So once you submit your pitch, you are not in a position to change. So during this period from opening to submission, so myself and Professor Atula will take a question and answer session. If you have some issues related with that, technical issues, so we are planning to help you. So we take on, keep in mind, we are taking Saturday, 16th October 2021, this month. And we are going to inform you the finalist, 17th November, and the 23rd will be the final event with the PIMARC conference. So you have a 1 week, then you can prepare a good presentation with PTT for the final round. So these are the important things which are also available, the e-flyer too. So then I'll move into some examples given here. Some examples, I'm not going to elaborate here, you can see. So the effectiveness of 6-month dance intervention in Parkinson's disease. So this is not a management, but this is mostly the medical sciences or maybe the allied health. So you can see how she prepared the pitch for the contest. Working title research, you can get an idea. And the tools, and also the what's new and so what, how she justify so what, you can see. And also the contribution clearly indicate and other considerations. So this is a good example for you, even though it's out of management. And some additional readings. This also at the Social Science Research Network, published by the pitching book of Professor Robert Puff. You can attend that one. Please refer additional reading. And also you can get some video presentation at the finals. These all are the pitching competition conducted as the Queensland Business School, I think 2015. So if you have a time, when it's come to the final stage, you can see how they are going to present their research idea in front of others, right? So that you have to have. But at the early stage also, you have to pay more attention to the technical part, the preparation, the quality of your pitch. But when it's come to the, when you are selecting as a finalist, you have to think about the oral pitch too. Okay, 2016, there are a lot of resources. And also you can see the video at different categories, business, advanced images, innovations, education, things like that. They open, but we open only for the management and the social sciences related topics for you, because this is a starting point, the Sri Lankan perspective. And I think that's enough for the local. I think you get some information, the concept, and the how we are going to organize the local pitching research competition. We have another 15 minutes. And now we are going to give some brief introduction about the global pitching research competition. I'm not going to talk about this. I think Professor Robert will attend at 10:30. He's the ideal person to explain this one. And he already sent a couple of material, video with PTTs. Hope that you have gone through. So Dr. Nilakshi, PIMA has sent this information to you in advance. We ask you to read and come, because you are a PhD, HDR student, research students. As I said that, you don't depend on your supervisors. Don't depend on your supervisors. You have to do by yourself. The self-learning, we call independent learning, independent study is the most important thing. Okay, that is the most important thing. From this template, we groom you, we adjust you, we train you for that direction. Okay, so we are not giving all the information to you. We are just guiding you. It's your responsibility to go through giving this guidance and achieve your target. Okay, so Professor Atula, we have another 12 minutes up to 10:30. Robert will join it. We have, I think, 10 minutes. So would you like to prepare a video for that? Even though this is 40 minutes, would you play this video in the introduction, Professor?
Yes, then I will share.
Until that playing, I want to inform, if you have any question related to the local, particularly the concept paper, that this template, you must raise the question at the question and answer session, which start at 10:30. Please ask the question from the Robert Puff, right? Okay.
Is it okay?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Robert Pfaff,
Yes,
creator of Pitching Research Framework and founder of Inspires, the International Society for Pitching Research for Responsible Science. I'm very excited and pleased to present to you this information session for the IGPRC, the Inspires Global Pitching Research Competition. First, a word from our sponsors. I'm very happy and pleased to tell you that we have as our major platinum sponsor, Bond University, platinum sponsor, Elsevier, gold sponsors, Macquarie University, the University of Queensland, University of Wollongong, Bond University Business School and AFANS, and a wide array of silver sponsors as shown on the following slides. And some bronze sponsors too. There are three goals of today's information session. Firstly, we'll briefly explain the Pitching Research Framework tool. Second, we'll provide general information, instructions and a timeline for the 2021 IGPRC. And thirdly, we'll point you to some helpful resources. Goal number one. For a more detailed explanation, and indeed essential reading, I refer you to my SSRN paper, Pitching Research, which is freely available from the address shown on your screen from the SSRN. When you have access to these slides, you can simply hover over the link and go directly to the site when you are web connected. I'd also strongly recommend that you have a look at the 9-minute primer animation video with the link shown on this slide. And also, please check out Pitching Research Matters, the primer video where I give a detailed explanation of the pitching research framework at the link shown on this slide. The essential pitching research framework is shown on this slide, and there are 11 key elements. We have the first 4: working title, basic research question, key papers, motivation. The next 3, the basic building blocks of idea, data, and tools. The next 2, the 2 key questions, what's new and so what. The 1 bottom line contribution and other considerations. The challenge is to use 1,000 words plus or minus 20%. There are 5 golden rules in which you should make your chosen 1,000 words clear, focused and to the point, meaningful, effort-based, internally connected, and having the ability to start a conversation. In other words, communication. Here is some more detailed advice around the word allocation for the different elements of the pitching research framework. Working title of about 10 to 12 words. A basic research question, 1 or 2 sentences, 20 to 30 words. Choose 3 key papers, about 60 to 70 words. Your motivation should be 150 to 200 words. The idea, the data, and the tools, for each of these, I would allocate 100 to 150 words. What's new, so what, contribution, and other considerations. For each of these 4 items, I would allocate 50 to 100 words. Let's move on to goal 2. And here I'll give you details of the pitching research competition, the IGPRC. Now, for more detailed information around the IGPRC, after the 1st of October, in a new section 6 of the pitching research evolution into a programmatic framework, self-reflection and the story so far, the address shown on this screen, section 6, a new section 6 will give you the details of the pitching research competition. So check that out from the 1st of October. Well, number 1, what is the IGPRC all about? Well, the Inspires Global Pitching Research Competition is a geographically ambitious research training initiative using FAF's pitching research framework. Inspires, as I've already mentioned to you, is the International Society of Pitching Research for Responsible Science, and you can check out the webpage for Inspires in the link shown at the bottom of this slide. Now, a screenshot of the Inspires webpage is shown here, and you would arrive at this by clicking the link shown at the top of the screen. So what is the IGPRC? Well, apart from requiring you to create a 1,000-word pitch relevant to your interests and expertise, your pitch should be about new research. So no analysis or no substantial analysis should yet have been executed. And ideally, the data should not yet exist, or at least not yet have been seriously interrogated. Now, I have a very strong preference for pitches that are more practically focused. So you're strongly encouraged to create pitches that have that practical orientation while still maintaining that scholarly basis. So the practical orientation would be reflected by a focus on key stakeholders or end users. Secondly, why? Why have the IGPRC? Well, in a nutshell, it is a primary way that we will deliver on the underlying mission of Inspires, namely to facilitate research training and capacity building, resting on the foundation theme of responsible science. Thirdly, who? Who are the key stakeholders in the IGPRC? Well, the primary key stakeholders, and indeed the focus of this information session, are the pitchers, the entrants to the competition. They are the primary stakeholders. Other stakeholders are the assessors of the written pitches, the country-based coordinators, and the sponsors. In terms of the primary stakeholders, the pitchers themselves, here is some information about eligibility. So the primary eligibility is that the competition will be open to all currently active higher degree research students, primarily PhD students, research masters, and those fourth year honours students that are thesis based. It is also open to early career researchers, ECRs, and we will define ECRs quite simply as anyone within 5 years of their PhD graduation. And there's also secondary eligibility here because we require one experienced researcher to be explicitly listed as a collaborator in the entry. So this experienced researcher will most likely be either the supervisor of the thesis or a research mentor that is closely collaborating with the early career researcher. Now, both the primary applicant as well as their nominated senior collaborator must register as an Inspires member. This is totally free. There is no cost to this membership. And to make it easier for you, this slide gives you a link directly to a Google Doc registration form. Now, in those jurisdictions where a Google Docs form is problematic, the second link on this slide will be your alternative. So how will the IGPRC be executed? Well, put simply, this slide lays it out for you. And the primary focus of the global aspect of this will be through country-based competitions. And currently we have about 20 coordinators that are coordinating competitions to be run in those 20 countries or jurisdictions. So in this diagram, C1, C2, etc., represent these different countries. And you can see that there will be one winner coming from each of these countries or jurisdictions. Each of those winners will go into a pool of semi-finalists. Those entries coming from countries other than the 20 or so that I've mentioned, for which there is no dedicated coordinator, there will be at least one winner coming from the pool of these other country entries. Now, if that pool is very large, there will be multiple winners. There will also be winners coming from other categories, and I list on the right-hand side of this slide the likely or most likely avenue for these other categories. There will be a winner from the current round of AFANS grants. There will be a winner from a Shark Tank being sponsored by the Finance SIG of AFANS. And we're also teaming up with a local conference here in Australasia, the Financial Markets and Corporate Governance Conference of 2022. And there will also be an avenue for application through the conference where if you are interested in having your pitch as a presentation at the conference, you can actually nominate it through this conference avenue. So all the winners from those different areas will be pooled into the semi-finalists. And from those semi-finalists, we will select the top 6. And the top 6 will then go into the grand final. Now, as an example, for Sri Lanka, on this slide, we are very pleased and proud to highlight that the Postgraduate Institute of Management at the University of Sri Jayewardenepura, PIMARC, is going to sponsor the Sri Lankan competition for 2021, and details of the Sri Lankan competition are being made available via PIM and PIMARC for those in Sri Lanka. As another example, the Shark Tank event that I mentioned just a little while ago, being sponsored by the Athens Finance SIG, and there are some special conditions attaching to the Shark Tank event, which would be an avenue.
Professor Atula, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Professor Atula, I think the time has gone. I think now.
Okay.
2, both of the
Yes.
resource person have joined to the session. I
Right.
think we can move into the session, and Professor Robert Puff and Dr. Malik, both you are welcome on behalf of the what you call Postgraduate Institute of Management, University of Srijavatanapuram.
Sorry, Santa,
Yes.
can I suggest you play the rest of that
Yeah.
video? Because
yes.
it'll
Okay.
save, but please keep playing it.
Okay.
It has important.
Okay, sure. The technical person, can you allocate? Professor Robert has facilities for sharing the session.
Already done. Now wait, sir.
Yeah, okay. Robert, now you can share your screen with the participants.
Okay.
Before moving into that, don't start your presentation. I think Professor Atula want to say something about both of you. I think you have done a very good job regarding this concept, and also Dr. Malik and you. I think it's our duty to admire your participation as well as your contribution. Professor Atula.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Vasanta. I'm sure you can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Okay. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, we come to the most important part of this information session. First of all, I would like to introduce our resource person today. So it is with great pleasure, actually, I introduce our main resource person, Professor Robert Pfaff, who is going to conduct this question and answer sessions today regarding pitching research framework as well as pitching research competition. Professor Robert is the creator of the pitching research framework, and as well as is the founder of International Society of Pitching Research for Responsible Science. That particular society primarily aim at training, conduct research training and capacity building on its main theme, that is very important, main theme of promoting responsible science. Currently is the president of this society. Okay. And presently, Professor Robert attached to the Bonn University as a professorial fellow, and he's an emeritus professor of finance at University of Queensland Business School at Australia. He's an international reputation of empirical finance researcher, and he secured more than 14 research grants and over 340 refereed journal publication. Okay, that is a remarkable achievement, out of which actually about 42 articles published in A-star ranked journals. Okay, his career citation are over 17,000. The H index also 65. It's a very rare and unique achievement for any academics. He has a passion for nurturing an early career researcher. Okay, in realizing this passion, actually he created this pitching research framework as we early introduced to you. And not only that, he organized the global pitching research competition as an annual event right now, participating large number of countries all over the world. Professor Robert has supervised over 50 PhD students to successful completion. And not only that, Professor Robert actually functioned as a editor, the editor as well as associate the editor in leading journals, okay, including accounting and finance, Abacus, the Australian Journal of Management. Presently, he's editor-in-chief in the Pacific Basin Finance Journal. Okay, I mean, today we are so fortunate. Actually, we are getting Professor Robert as a chief, the resource person or the main resource person for this session. In addition to that, actually, Dr. Malik also participates with us as the resource person. So I would like to introduce him also to you. Actually, Dr. Malik currently functions as a vice president of this global competition. Is the lecturer in finance at the University of the Queensland. Actually, he achieved his PhD in the same university in 2020, and he's the recipient of highly competitive international postgraduate research scholarships from the Australia as well as University of Queensland as well. His the research interests include financial markets, climate change, interest, risk, and energy economics. Okay, those kind of areas actually he specialized, and he published scholarly work in several highly ranked academic journals, including Accounting and Finance Journal and Renewable and Sustainable Energy Review Journal. So as vice president of the global competition, he has been playing key role in expanding fishing research competition internationally. Actually, he was the key person in arranging first ever fishing research competition outside Australia. He organized in Pakistan and initiated all Pakistan research competition in 2019 with the collaboration of University of Queensland and University of Haripur, Pakistan. Okay, now I would like to invite both of you to take in charge and conduct this question and answer session. Okay, thank you very much for participating in this question and answer session despite your busy schedule. Okay, over to you, Professor Robert.
Good. Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me fine. Is that correct?
Yes, Robert. It's very good.
And see me? Yep, very good. So first of all, let me thank both of you, Professor Wasantha and Prof. Atula, for putting in great enthusiasm and effort to bring the Sri Lankan arm of the competition into action. And indeed, you're leading the way. It's a little stressful maybe for us all, but I think for us in terms of the global competition, while we're still very early on in getting things happening, you're pushing us hard, and while it's creating a bit of nervous energy, I think this is important for us just to make sure that we have everything in place for the bigger competition. So it's really exciting for us to really, I guess, kick off the competition in a sense in Sri Lanka. Now, what I would like to do is I want to share my screen. I just have, while you're maybe still thinking of your, I've got to look over to this side for my screen. While the participants are thinking of their questions, let me just give you a couple of additional things to think about in terms of what it means to be part of the competition. And I guess what I will say now, and I'll keep it very brief, but I'll try and both talk to the the big global competition, but also have it as relevant to the Sri Lankan arm of the competition. So it's basically a bit of a recap, and sponsors are important. So I want to take a few seconds just to thank the many sponsors. And we have 2 platinum sponsors. So my university now is Bond University. Very proud and pleased that they're backing me very significantly. But I'd also like to thank Elsevier, the publishers. They're also enabling us to put forward, I think, some quite meaningful cash prizes at the end of the competition. So this couldn't have been done without the very generous support of Elsevier. Now we have gold sponsors as well. So my business school at Bond, the University of Queensland, Macquarie University, AFANS, the University of Wollongong. And because of the very enthusiastic support that we've had in Sri Lanka, and the sponsorship coming through from PIM and PIMARC, I've decided to advance the sponsorship status from what I'd initially promised as silver to gold sponsorship. So thank you so much for your support. There are a range of silver sponsors. I'll just flick those through now, but you can see there's much support worldwide, including these journals are being involved, and we also have some bronze sponsors. And while you're thinking of your questions, I've got 3 goals very quickly to cover here. I want to I've opened up the wrong slides. Sorry. I will stop sharing. Let me close those slides so that I don't. The reason I've got confused is they start off very similarly. So so I can skip through the first few bits. So this is the recap session. I do apologize. Okay, so I had the same thank you to sponsors in the previous slides, and the goals today are very brief and succinct. So I've got 3 goals. I want to first draw your attention to 3 key SSRN papers that I think are important for you to have a quality experience in the competition. I'm going to draw your attention then, secondly, to 3 key videos that I think are very important and well worth you having a look at. And then the 3 key insights from the global competition, so the highlights. So the 3 key papers from SSRN, and all of these papers are freely available. The first essential go-to resource is the pitching research paper that I'm sure many of you have already accessed, but if you haven't, I think this is just a must. So the address is here, and I've sent through these PowerPoints, so you'll be able to get access to these PowerPoints. And if you want to fully understand the framework, you've got to get this paper, you've got to read it. Now, the second go-to will be section 6 of this paper. That's a very recent one that I put up on SSRN. And section 6 gives details of the competition. So if you want some more details of the competition, then you can access them here. And the third go-to SSRN paper is a paper that tells you about responsible science, and that it does matter, and the matters around responsible science. This will also be something worth you getting access to. So the second goal, while you're thinking of your questions, the 3 key videos that you should access. The first video is in fact the one that you've already mostly watched. We've curtailed that just now, but you were watching the information video. You probably have most of the important information that is relevant to you for the Sri Lankan setting. So if you want to watch the rest of that video yourselves, that will be okay. The second video I draw you to attention to is a video presentation that's quite detailed around understanding the pitching research framework in its specifics. So if you feel that will be of benefit to you, then the address for that primer video is here. And the third one that I draw your attention to is actually an example of a pitch that was done by a student at the University of Queensland. Her name is Keris Downing. And Keris was the runner-up of the competition that I ran in 2018 at the University of Queensland. So this video goes for about 10 minutes, and it's actually Keris Downing giving an oral presentation of her PhD research as part of that competition, the pitching research competition. So it's a very good presentation. It gives you a very good example of how to orally communicate your PhD or your research to an expert in the field. The third goal that I want to do now as a recap, before we move on to field your questions, are three key highlights of the competition. And as you've already seen, and I won't dwell on this, the primary eligibility is either that you are a current research student, a PhD student, for example, or that you are within 5 years of your PhD graduation, and this will be our definition of early career researcher. The secondary eligibility is that you must have a senior researcher listed as a collaborator, either your supervisor if you're a student, a research student, or a research mentor or research collaborator. And both of you must sign up as members of the Inspires network. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything. The second thing is the structure, the broad structure of the global competition. The main avenue for entering the competition are the different country-based competitions, of which Sri Lanka is one of these. And so there will be a winner that comes from Sri Lanka, as well as winners from the other country-based competitions. They will pool into the semi-final pool. So there'll probably be about, I'm guessing, 30 semi-finalists. Now, all of the assessment will be done based on your written pitch. And then we will look at this semi-final pool of around 30, and we will again look at the written pitches and make a judgment as to the top 6. So all of that process will be based on the written pitches. We get to the grand final, and the grand final will be a showcase of the top 6 researchers that have entered the competition. And this is where the oral pitch will come into play. So we'll have an online virtual grand final, an international panel, and we'll make the decisions based on a combination of the oral pitch at the grand final event with the quality of the written pitch itself. The third thing I want to highlight around the competition, the global competition, are the benefits and incentives that you have to be part of this. And there's sort of direct and indirect incentives and benefits. I mean, one that I've highlighted on this slide is you will become part of the Inspires family. And I think this will be a long-term and long-lasting benefit that you will get way beyond the competition itself. This is my sincere belief, and really it will be the benefits that you get in this longer-term setting of how you go about thinking, designing, and planning your research, and the network, the leverage effect of this network that you will be belong to, this global network. So in terms of the country-based winners, the top 8 countries, the winners of those top 8 countries will receive a prize equivalent to 1,000 Australian Now, the thing you should note is these top 8 will be outside of the top 6 that go into the final. So in fact, 14 countries will get a significant prize. And in fact, I'm still hopeful of raising some extra funding, some sponsorship, and I can't guarantee it, but I'm very confident that every coordinated country, including Sri Lanka, will participate. The winner will get a cash prize. And if you have a lot of entries, if you're in the top 8, the cash prize will be the equivalent of 1,000 Australian dollars, which I think is quite a reasonable incentive. I would hope that in future years we'll have even a bigger prize pool, but it's been very challenging to initiate this competition. And we have around about 40, the equivalent or total sponsorship of 40,000 Australian dollars. For a global competition, that is quite modest, but trust me, it's very difficult to initiate these competitions like this, particularly in the context of COVID and what COVID has done for all sorts of activity as you would have seen in Sri Lanka. So I think going forward, we have a lot of upside, and I believe the incentives here are very significant. Now, the overall winner of the competition will win 10,000. So the winner of the Sri Lankan part or arm is still in the running and has a chance to maybe be the overall winner. There'll be an award certificate. We'll offer research mentoring, matched research mentoring with one of our experienced Inspires members. And this could well be someone outside of Sri Lanka, which will give you an additional international flavor of I guess, the research world globally. And there will also be an event that we will offer showcasing the country-based winners, particularly if they're interested in, so let's say you're not a PhD student yet, but you'd like to be, then this would be a way in which you could market yourself and essentially hope to find a PhD supervisor and a place to do your PhD. So sorry to take probably a little extra time there because I slipped up with the slides. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but hopefully in combination with the video that you saw and this extra information, you have a good idea of what's entailed in the competition, but you still may have some questions. Now, we can do these questions either via written. So I'm looking at the chat right now. And Malik, if you're online and you've already had a look at the chat, and I don't know if there's anything there you've picked out, I'm trying to scan it now, but I'm also happy to have questions that if we give the audience, we unmute the audience. If they want to ask a question through a vocal means, I'm happy to entertain those questions. And indeed, Vasantha or Atula, if you have questions on behalf of the potential participants, I'm happy to hear those as well. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. And you gave a very brief introduction with your presentation. And also you send a most valuable information through the video as well. And before moving into the question and answer session, I think one of our PhD students has sent a question, Robert, and I don't know what her name. She's asking, I'm at the stage of concept development, not yet decided to work on data or tools. Can I include proposed methodology instead of real data and the tools?
Well, I mean, I suppose it's open to people's interpretation of how they want to put their entry. I think taking that approach will be problematic. I think we don't when you're planning your research, we don't expect you to have all the answers. But I guess one of the things this framework does is to put more, in a nice way, to put more pressure on you to think at least, around the data and the sampling, some of the at least broader considerations of how you're going to go doing, how you're going to go about doing your research. And I suppose if you either are not at a stage where you can even start to broadly give that some meaningful thought, then probably you're just not quite ready for the competition. When you're not quite at the stage of where we're really thinking for this competition. But I don't want to be too negative there and put you off. I suppose there's still some meaningful time, meaningful days ahead and weeks where if that's the part for your research, that data and sample, that you're not quite sure, why not start to really give that a priority now, to at least, don't expect you're going to have the perfect answer or have all the answers, but at least be able to put something down that fits with your current thinking. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's fine. And even this template we are targeting, we are using as a research planning tool. So particularly the students who are at the early stage of their PhD, it really helps for them to plan their work. Too.
Absolutely.
And Robert, there is another good question asking Hiranya Desanayaka. You can go to the chat. She's asking 3 clarification questions.
So is it in the chat?
Go down, yeah, down. The last one, she's asking, dear sir, I have 3 questions related to the pitching template.
I can't see the dear sir thing.
Go to the chat.
I think she has addressed you, Professor Vasanta, so we can't see that. It's more like a private chat.
Oh.
Even I can't see that question in the chat box.
Robert, can I? Yes. Okay, Robert, can I explain her 3 questions? She says, dear sir, I have 3 questions related to the pitching template.
Yes.
Suppose the article related to A-rated journal articles are not directly related to the research question. Is it acceptable to include unindexed or BOC rated articles, book chapters in the empirical articles?
Yeah. So in the end, the most important thing is, in terms of the what I've called the papers, or the articles, the most important thing is that from your point of view. So when I'm saying the student, let's say it's the PhD student. I'll take that as a sort of example. From the PhD student's point of view, that they choose those pieces of prior research, whether they're book chapters, whatever they are, that they are the most relevant and salient and important in terms of your current thinking as to how you're putting your research plan together. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Having said that, my argument is, if you come up, let's say you do that, and you come up with a book chapter, an unpublished paper from 10 years ago, and a C journal paper, but you say to yourself, hey, these are the most, of everything I've read, these are the most important. Well, I would say to you as the student, wait a minute, sit back and think about this. If you've got a collection like that, which seem quite weak to me, and I've chosen a very hypothetical, so a C-level journal, an unpublished paper, and a book chapter. To me, as a combination, I think that is weak. And so the student might say, but hey, they're the most salient or important. Well, that's fine, but I would say you're not challenging yourself hard enough. You know, it's either you're taking a very too relaxed view, or you're being too narrow in the way you're thinking about this. There's a weakness here. To me, it signals a weakness, and you have to challenge yourself to say, maybe the research question that I've got isn't the best one that I could have. Maybe I have to change its slant so that when I alter it, suddenly, rather than the C-level journal, I find an A-level journal. Or if I change it, suddenly instead of a book chapter, I find a tier 1 journal. So as I said, the most important thing or consideration are, what are the most salient and influential research papers, chapters, books, whatever. What are the most salient and influential? But don't stop at a set, or don't be satisfied by a set that you think, oh, that's actually, there's a weakness here, and you've got to try and fix the weakness. So that's the first question. So
yeah, that's good. Robert, you can see now, she shared with everyone now. Go to the chat.
Or new. Oh, okay. This. Okay. Suppose the articles. I'm not okay. Can we prepare a pitch for an exploratory study based on mixed method? Short answer, absolutely, 100% yes. I don't know whether there's a longer answer. I mean, but why not? You know, if it's exploratory, again, you know, there's still room for many exploratory studies. You know, I guess a lot of the advice I give will downplay the importance or the significance of exploratory studies, but because we're always moving to new, you know, sort of new streams of research, new arms of research, and the, you know, and sort of immature and early phases of research will always have a lot of exploratory stuff. So it's always important to have that. But what I would say is there's a lot of exploratory work that should, you know, in a way shouldn't be done, or at least shouldn't be done as sort of the, let's say, in terms of your PhD, the capstone of your PhD. You know, if you think of a PhD model as one where there are 3 essays, and not everyone does a 3-essay thesis, but I think it's becoming more and more popular around the world, and it does depend on the discipline, et cetera, but having as the very first piece an exploratory chapter, and then by the 3rd chapter, it's not exploratory at all, to me, that's a nice progression. So to try and tie that back into the competition, if there are students who are at that very early phase where, you know, that first piece is exploratory, then of course that would be fine. But just beware and ask yourself, am I doing an, is it justified to do an exploratory piece? And let me give you a quick context of where I think it wouldn't be, or unlikely to be. And that is in an area that there's been a lot of work, a very mature stage area or direction of research. Maybe it's not only been happening for years, but decades. So to me, it's very unlikely that an exploratory piece should come in a very mature line of research. It's much more likely if it's quite a new area of study. Is it compulsory to have an econometric model for analysis? The short answer is no, it's not compulsory. So I would imagine quite a number of the submissions will be what I would call qualitative. And that's absolutely fine. Qualitative studies where you wouldn't have an econometric approach, you know, to me, and I'm not a qualitative researcher, but what immediately pops into my head as one of the most common qualitative approaches is an interview. Okay, and you you record and you take notes, and then you distill out of the answers to an interview a theme of argument that will support, and maybe it's somewhat exploratory in nature. But anyhow, a very short answer to that third question is it is not compulsory to have an econometric model, and it's most likely to be the case when you're doing a qualitative piece of research.
Robert, with that question, Robert,
Yes.
with that question, I want to add these things. In your template, you are mostly talk about the empirical studies.
Yes.
Does it mean that non-empirical studies cannot be, execute this, use this template?
I think the short answer is I've seen it, but it's really tough because non-empirical means what do you say when you get to data? So one example that I've seen, and it can work, but it's probably not really well suited here, is to pitch a literature review. Okay, so in a very traditional sense, at least, that's non-empirical. But I've still seen some good examples. So what happens is when they get to the data section, they start talking, I guess, about how you will go about filtering keyword searches, filtering to get the number of papers that you're going to do the review on. So, the data, in a sense, are, you might say, I'm going to do this and this and this filter, and I anticipate that I will have 65 articles that will be the basis of the review. So that's sort of like the data. And it will be very, I would say, qualitative in nature. Having said that, I would have to say, for those students, my strong advice is don't pitch a non-empirical paper. It's very unlikely that you will be able to pull off what would be deemed, in terms of the competition. I think it still could be valuable to use the framework, but you have to be a little bit more broad-minded and inventive on how you interpret some of the elements. But for the purposes of the competition, if you don't have an empirical part to your thesis, and I guess some won't, but I think that these days that's quite unusual. So if you do an entirely analytic or theoretical thesis or a theoretical article, they're not well aligned with this framework. But my view is, while there's valuable research that's non-empiric, it's in the minority around the world, and the majority of research is empirical, and that's really what we're catering for here.
Even in your template, the core concepts are elaborate through the idiot guides, data, idea data, and the tools.
Tools,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Robert, then you can, for the next question, Kamal Desapriya is asking question.
Can you please?
Professor Vasant, I think that question also not available for us.
Really? No, he's sharing with everyone.
Is this the 3 key papers?
No. Shall I read that one, Robert?
Yeah.
Okay. Please
I'm
share
sure
with
you can share
Okay,
with everyone.
Dear sir, with the pitching template, we are not expected.
Oh, I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it. Yep. But we're not expected to provide all the related papers under key papers. Then how we can select priorities to key papers for the template? What other parameters? Well, this is the big, in the end, I can't tell you everything. I mean, the sort of things I can tell you, I've already sort of suggested in terms of, you read 100 papers, all right? It's not literally going to be 100, but it's a big number. And what the challenge here is to say, I've read 100 papers. So the first thing is I have to have start to think about what are the most important, the moderately important, the less important, and the totally unimportant. So you've got to start to think of, you know, prioritizing the importance of what you're reading. So what this choose 3 key papers is sort of to say, we don't want to know about the totally unimportant, the less important, the moderately important. It comes from the subset that you might deem to be really important. So you've read 100 papers, immediately you're going to, surely you need to, that filters out 80 of the 100 and maybe even more, because, you know, if you're in a situation where you cannot distinguish from really important to moderately important, you've got a problem, right? And this is trying to get you to say to you, you have to make a call and a judgment. So the really important might be 20 out of 100. Then I'm saying to you, well, you've got to look at them more closely and say, and you know, the criteria you use are all linked to other parts of the template in a way. So what is your research question? Surely that's going to, you know, that's going to help you weed out some of those that you think are pretty important, but just not important enough. I mean, so it's really coming to the, and it will link to the idea as well. So when you start to crystallize what your idea is, the really, really important papers should be really, really relevant and firm foundation stones for your research question, for your idea. You know, one of those key papers might be one that demonstrates the key or uses the key set of tools that you want to use, or the method. So that would be a good reason for at least the choice of one of them. But in the end, you have to make that choice. Everyone has to make that choice, and the considerations will not be uniform from one person to the next. But the general consideration will be, what is the most important things that I've read and the papers that I've read, and where are they coming from? And that should help you to identify the 3 key papers.
Okay, Robert, I think it's good. The next question asked, you can, I think, okay, they didn't copy everyone. Dear sir, I will ask that as per preaching template, how we identify key papers related with the area. The same question that she's also asking, the identification of key papers related to the research area.
Yeah, I think I'll just be repeating myself. You know, that if you can't, if the student can't actually figure it out, then they're probably still a little lot, you know. So it probably means you're not quite sure of the research question. You definitely don't have a really fixed idea of what the idea, you know, what the core idea will be, the sample and how you're going to do it. So it basically means you're still pretty cloudy and uncertain about a lot of key elements of your work. And maybe you're not even sure of that you've narrowed down enough the big literature that you started to read to a smaller literature, which will be bound together by quite a tight theme. So it's really then saying, well, you know, you have to take a step back and say, what is it that I really want to do here? What is my research question? What will be my idea? What's the broad motivation? And once you get more confident about that, when you then come back to the literature that you've been reading, you'll be able to, I guess it's sort of like you've got these 100 papers. For a lot of the early part of trying to identify the top 3, it's weak, you know, ruling papers out. You know, that's interesting, but largely irrelevant. That one's unimportant. That one's moderately important, but not recent enough. So it's sort of like, of the things you're reading for the the early, an early and middle part of trying to identify what the key papers are, it's knocking them out and saying, it can't be that one, it can't be that one, it can't be that one, until you get a smaller and smaller set where you're thinking, well, it could be these, and then having a closer look at them, and then in conjunction with some of the other key parts of the template, which may then have to change or start to change because you've got a misty idea of the research question. You look at the papers again and it starts to come much clearer to you as what the research question should be, so that in a sort of almost simultaneous way, you're getting clarity over the research question, which is helping you to identify what those key papers are.
Yes, thanks, Robert. And there is another question sent by Dr. Sakuntala. You can go through it because she copied everyone. The title in the template is...
Okay, so 12 words. Can you please give your thoughts on making the title most impactful within these 12 words? Research works at a varying numbers of variables. Input your advice. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough to give too much specific advice because every situation is different. But here's one way of viewing it, and I'm a big believer in thinking in threes. I try as much as I can when I might have a list of 10 things or 20 things or 7 things or 5 things. To me, if you can express something in sets of 3, that's and it's not a random 3. It's sort of like the 3 highest value priority items, things, whatever you're talking about. So take my little recap presentation. If you remember, I said I have 3 goals, and under 3 goals, I had 3 things, 3 items. So how does that work for the title? Well, in terms of the title, and it gets back a bit to the 3 key papers, but it's a different angle on this now. What are the 3 most salient parts to your research that should be signaled in your title? What are they? So when I read a title of a pitch or a paper, I will have my red pen out and I will try and identify how many things are being shown, how many sort of different concepts or different aspects or different dimensions, whatever you want to call it. How many are there in the title? And I'm hoping to land on 3. Honestly, I'm hoping to land on 3. Because if there's less than 3, to me, you're not giving me enough information to know what your title is about. If I've had many cases where I'm underlining and circling many more than 3, 4, 5, 6 different things. And there's no science to this. It's just a rule of thumb. But for me, if there's too much happening in the title, I go as the receiver of this, as a supervisor, as a collaborator, I get a headache. My head spins. I'm confused. And I think it reflects a confusion by the person that's created the title. So while I haven't really given you a great piece of advice here in a sense, because it's not really specific, I think I've given you a fantastic piece of advice in terms of how to get the answer. And that is force yourself to live by this rule of 3. So come up with a title that when you get your red pen out and circle the different things that are in the title, aim to show 3. But don't make it a random 3. Make it the best 3, so that when you package those 3 elements together, you sit back and you go, that is what my research is about.
So one thing I want to inform for the audience participants, if you send forward your question through chat, please copy to everyone. So don't direct the message to the particular person. Please copy to everyone. And there is another question that I send it to everyone. what are the main points we have to highlight under the other consideration in the pitching template? Robert, I want to add this one. If you can highlight, because at the planning stage, this is very important. You mentioned in your presentation the risk related with the research. The risk, for example, today the COVID situation we didn't predict. Most of our PhD students now facing the COVID situation. They are going to get the data under the COVID. When they plan their research, they haven't think about that situation.
Yes.
So how do you deal with that kind of risk factors when at the planning stage under the other consideration, the what you call
Well, yeah. I mean, how to deal with them is a big problem, and I don't know that I've got many bits of advice there. But you know what this is saying is, well, if you don't think about what these other things are, you won't even know what to try and deal with. So all this is trying to do is put on your radar screen that there are some things that you need, additional things you need to think about. So the general advice I would have on this one, I'll give it some general advice and then specific. The general advice is under other considerations that you put, it can be anything that is relevant to your research that you feel hasn't been adequately covered in the rest of the template. If it's already been covered, you don't need to repeat it. So that would be the general piece of advice. Anything at all that you believe is relevant to the execution or planning of your research that hasn't been covered above. Now, I make some suggestions in my SSRN paper and some of my presentations. I get the chance sometime to talk about them, and I'll give you some examples, but these are only examples of what I would see are things that aren't necessarily adequately covered in the rest of the template that would be material and important to share with your supervisor around the planning of your research. One broad area is feasibility of your research. So if there's anything that will impact the feasibility of your research that you feel hasn't been adequately explained, let's say it could be data or sample as you suggest, here's the place to mention it. Another thing that I believe is pretty important here, and it does make the assumption that as researchers, we want to publish our work. And I think even for PhD students and research students, this should be a relevant consideration that you want to ultimately try and publish your research. So the thing that would be relevant related to that is, what are the journals that you think might be good targets for your research, the target journals? And it should be realistic rather than, too ambitious or sort of a moonshot, right? So we could all say, and I've had students say, I want to publish, I hope to publish in the Journal of Finance. Is that going to happen? I can say almost categorically 100% it won't happen. So it's not really that helpful to state a journal which is clearly ridiculous, but you should have that, you should have that in your mind. You should be willing to put that down, and that can be part of the conversation. And that's a good contextual piece as well, because it sort of helps someone that you're trying to communicate with to, in a sense, have a calibration, okay? A calibration of what your research goal is in terms of the publication. So are you aiming for something pretty ambitious, moderately ambitious, or not ambitious? And that opens up a whole lot of conversation points as well. And then the other more specific things that I would think about that would come in here are around the research risks. And the three that I write about in my SSRN paper are competitor risk. So thinking about competitors, because there's bound to be competitors globally, internationally, there will be, and even sometimes locally. The risk of no result. Okay, that's one of the big nightmares that we have as researchers and students, that we're not going to find anything. Now that opens up another bigger conversation around responsible science that we don't have time for today and will just divert us. I think this is a sad part of our industry, that we do need to worry too much about the no result risk, because what this will tend to inject is a bias in terms of what we see in journals. But that's another conversation. It is a risk that we need to think about. Are we likely to find a significant finding, and will it be a meaningful or economic and important one? So the risk of competition, the risk of no result, and the other one is the risk of having a redundant idea, obsolescence, I call it. And that's really just to get us to be wary that sometimes, and maybe more often than we like to think about, there's a sort of shelf life for a research, that something that's topical now and everyone's excited about, and maybe in a sense COVID might be this, although if you limit your thinking to COVID as opposed to just stressful times or market, pandemics more generally, or a sort of times when the world is very unusual and being challenged in sort of what's come out of COVID, then I suppose it won't be obsolete. But it is possible to choose research topics that an experienced researcher will say, you ought to be very careful. That's topical now. It may not be topical in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. And you might be researching on something that, in a sense, has got, well, the worst case is what we would call inbuilt obsolescence. But that's a bunch of advice around those other considerations that I think is really important.
Yes, it's good that we can identify those kind of things at the planning stage under the other consideration. We are getting another couple of questions, Robert. You can take another couple of questions.
Yes, is it in selecting key
selecting
papers where research question revolves around multiple disciplines, can we focus on empirical papers on the core subject, and can we use at least one key conceptual paper that supports a theoretical framework we connect? Absolutely, yes. So I think what's good, one way of thinking of the choice of these 3 key papers is, in addition to everything I've told you, so I don't want to contradict anything like they should be the most important, they're the most influential, they're recent, they're written by leaders in the field, all that you don't want to, it's best to try and choose some that have unique features, or let me express it to you this way, it's really something to avoid. Avoid choosing 3 papers that are very, very similar. Because, if they're really, really similar, the extreme sort of way of viewing this is you haven't chosen 3, you've just chosen 1, and it's repeated 3 times. Now, a little different angle on that is try and avoid choosing more than 1 paper that's written by a common author, because they're not independent. So even though they may be super influential, so you might choose as your 3 key papers, 3 papers written by John Smith. Sorry, I'm using an English, but very common name. John Smith, 2021, Journal of Finance. And so they're written, and John Smith is a Nobel Prize winner, and you say, hey, I've ticked all your boxes. And I come back to you and say, I don't like, the flaw in that is they're all written by the same person. So you're not getting a good flavor of different views on that research topic. And it's quite likely, even though they're high quality, you're getting somewhat of a narrow view of that topic. When you say where does the paper come from, would you discount research done in some countries or take only high grade papers references for your literature. I guess my advice on this is can be viewed as very extreme, and for some even, I suppose, and I apologise for this if it heads in this direction, offensive. I don't mean it to be like that, and so we all have to, you have to take into account all your local considerations. Okay, in terms of, and even circling back to when I was talking about the target journal. While my advice would be to try and be as ambitious as you can, this for many of us might mean, when we add some realism to it, that we're not really, and it could be very appropriate for us to choose, at least for some of our research, part of our PhD, a very well-known local journal. It's pretty good quality, but international researchers haven't heard of it. And you might be able to, in a conversation with your advisor or your mentor, agree, for this paper on this topic where I am now in my career, this is entirely appropriate. And if you come to that conclusion, then in terms of using the template, you would modify the advice that I've given you around those 3 key papers, because it's likely at least one or more of those key papers will be very interesting and relevant to your local audience and that target journal that you've decided, which is well known and visible in your country, in Sri Lanka in this case. And that's wonderful. If you've come to that agreement and you've landed on that spot, that would be my general advice for your research. Outside of the competition. In terms of the competition, you might say, well, if I do that, am I going to be disadvantaged? I don't think you should look at it as any disadvantage. If you do a great job and you've got modest goals in mind, it is very possible that you would do very well in the competition. So you should use the competition to your advantage without getting too preoccupied in the sense with it that would skew your thinking or bias the way you're doing your research. That's not helpful to you in the end. So sorry, that's a long-winded answer to sort of saying you need to discuss it with your mentor, your advisor, and having ambitious local sort of targets for your research is entirely okay and appropriate.
Okay, Robert, this may be the final question. Padmasiri is asking, dear professor, you can, he copied to the everyone.
Is this, dear professor, we got research questions unpacking, is that it?
Yes.
Unpacking the research problem. So why don't you, research problem is your term, Padmasiri. So I guess, you're referring to the research question. Here in particular, it asks to give basic research question. So how to get the basic research question? Please explain that referencing. So it depends on what, I'm not entirely confident I know what you might mean by research problem. So I could sort of see in many cases that would be the research question, but it may not, it sort of depends. But I think the quick answer here would be that the research problem either is a good substitute for the research question, or if it's not, then it might just require a slight modification. But in order to get a feel for that, it's sort of probably worthwhile for you to have a look at my SSRN paper and see what I say about what the research question is. It's really the thing that, I guess in many ways is the problem, the research problem that, if you've got a research problem, you're trying to, well, in a sense, you know, if you're really successful, you'll solve it. But I think none of us ever solve a problem. And I guess in the same way, none of us ever, we set out what the research question is, but that's not to say we're going to solve it in our paper and in fact, in our research. So in fact, what I stress in the presentations that I give on the pitching research template and in my paper, in the SSRM paper, is that those first 4 items you should largely think of as setting the scene, as the big picture. So when I say research question, it's not meant for you to immediately narrow down to what you're going to do specifically. It's, in a sense, hover one level up and say, well, there's a bunch of research that's been actioned over the recent past, and all of this research is trying to help us understand better this research question. And I guess the research problem, if I were to sort of try and guess what you mean in your question in the chat of research problem, it would very much be at that level. So as long, my advice is, if your understanding of the problem, the research problem, is hovering above your specific work and not at the level of your specific work, then it's a substitute. If, however, your understanding of research problem is that defines what your paper is exactly about, it's not what I'm after with a research question. I want it to be one level up, because I want you in those first 4 items, in terms of, you know, even the title, but the research question, the 3 key papers, the motivation, that is anchoring for someone that you're trying to communicate with the bigger picture, that broader context. And once we have that broader context, we can then let you take us down to what you hope to do in your research. So the idea, the data, tools, the what's new, the so what, and the contribution.
Okay, Robert, I think so far we get a lot of questions related to your valuable template. What I think that the recommended essential reading, that is pitching research article available in the Social Science Research Network, if you go through that article several times, I think all the questions that you raise, the answers are there. So I think we have to do is, what you have to do is, so you can raise the question now at the early stage, but you have to do a lot of work by readings and learn by yourself. And you are a PhD or SDR students, we expect you to do the work by yourself independently. That's what we are encouraging through this template. And Robert, I think on behalf of others, I want to ask a couple of questions related to the global competition. Most of the questions raised here related to your valuable template. So in your presentation, you mentioned about the global competitions at the semi-final rounds. You said that each country, the winners are directly eligible to present the semi-final round. Each country winner, you are given chance to present the semi-final stage of the global competition.
There will be no, so what happens, so there's not, the only time there will be a presentation and an oral pitch is for the grand final.
Yeah.
So we have all the countries that there'll be country winners, and that will be a semi-final. They're in the semi-final pool. There will not be a semi-final event. What will happen behind the scenes? So what will happen is we will notify each of the coordinators. No, in fact, sorry, beg your pardon. The coordinator will notify to us who their winner is. So at that stage, we will coordinate to make that announcement of, here are the country winners, and they are in the semi-final pool. And what will then happen behind the scenes is, so that's a big job now for me, and that's why part of the reason why I devolved out to countries to take care of find me the winners. Then I will take on board the feedback that you have, say in Sri Lanka, of your winner, and the assessment that you were able to gather for that winner, as I will for all the winners. And then I will institute a process which will largely land on my shoulders, but I guess I'll have a small committee that will look at the semi-finalists. Let's say there are 25.
Okay.
And we will then assess the written only to filter down from 25 to the top 6. And the top 6 will then constitute the grand final.
And is there any preliminary, the competition, preliminary round for the competition at the global level, in addition to the semi-finals and finals? Any preliminaries?
Not from my side. As you can imagine, this is a pretty big undertaking, and I think already, it's a streamlined process, but there's a lot of work to be done. And in fact, a big part of the work that's now happening is we have, as you would have seen, the website now has the new pitch creation tool. We're frantically building the infrastructure behind that in order to receive the submissions. So actually, that's one question that's relevant for you in Sri Lanka, because you're in a sense, you're pushing us in terms of being able to deliver the structure for the submission. So we're hoping by late, I was sort of thinking the 25th of October, the official entries to the competition could be submitted. And if I remember rightly, that's probably a week before your deadline.
Yeah.
So the Sri Lankan, so everyone can use they can create their pitch online and edit it and whatever. What you can't do at the moment is submit. So we're still frantically building that, and so I will notify you when that's ready. And so at that stage, and if I'm right, if I'm correct, the 25th, the Sri Lankan entries can then be submitted, and we'll have to collect some information, or obviously some obvious information like the name, names and email addresses, so we can communicate, and that will be received on the website. So that's not it's tangential to your question, but it's relevant to it's a relevant part of my answer, just to reinforce to you.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of work to do, and if we add any preliminary rounds, it's just going to be almost impossible for us. So we've streamlined it, and we think it can work. And in terms of the first go at this, we're hoping we can do this, I guess on an annual basis. So we just need to make sure we have a successful first inaugural round, and then that will give us time to do to upgrade our systems and do an even better job in future years. But right now, this is where we're at, and there's a lot of work going here. The other thing you should bear in mind, we largely are relying on voluntary efforts. I have a little bit of funding from Bond University for around the web creation, but you can imagine in terms of, I'm absolutely so proud of what we've got in terms of our web resources and website. If that was created commercially, the budget would be astronomical. So at the moment, we've got some limited funding, and what the limited funding means is we can't act as quickly as we'd like. Like if we had unlimited funding, we would be able to throw many people at all the tasks and create the, so I have to, in a way, I feel like I need to apologize. We're not quite at a point where we can accept submissions yet, but it's important for me to stress to you that particularly this inaugural edition, we really have limited resources and it's going to slow us down. We're going to be able to deliver, but please,
Yes. I can understand because we are
give us
trying
your kind understanding is greatly appreciated.
We try to achieve a great target with the limited resources at the early stage. We highly appreciate your thought sharing with each others, and particularly our HDR students. The last question I want to ask regarding the competition, Robert. There are 11 items in your template, but when we come to the evaluation, the selection criteria, evaluating of template, so we limit into the 5 golden rules.
Yes.
Okay. Could you please elaborate your point of view, this 5 golden rules, how it may be useful for the audience, the evaluation?
Sure. So what I have to do is so I'm sort of hoping and assuming you've sort of talked about the 5 golden rules. So I don't.
I already informed them, but further explanation I need from you.
Yeah. So initially, when many years ago, when I was first thinking about how one would assess the template, my initial thought was to do what I think everyone would think. And that is, I thought, well, you just go through, you sort of read item A and you give it a score. Item B, so you do it linearly like that, and then you come up with overall score. And it didn't take me long to sort of believe that there's a big flaw in that. And one of the flaws is, and so this is, I just want to articulate the sort of thought process that I had. One of the flaws that I saw in that was that sort of approach didn't take into account how each item fits with each other. Because I could easily see a situation where you could score highly on all of the individual items, but then when you view it as a package, it's rubbish. All right, so that's extreme, but you could say something really very intelligent and clear and whatever for the title, the research question, the motivation, all that stuff, but then as a package, it's no good. So then I thought, well, wait there. What's really important is the connectivity. So that is and connectivity is one of my 5 golden rules. So when I suppose if I try to articulate now, well, how I transition from going of just assessing it almost like an exam, if this was an exam, there are 11 questions and you just give a score for each of the questions. To me, that's not what this is about. And in fact, to me, it ties in with something that I write in the SSRN paper, and when I give presentations, I stress that it's not about perfection. So again, if you go through and you grade it as, is this a perfect answer? Is this a perfect answer? Well, actually, I'm not so interested, it might seem odd. For me, that's not the main goal of this. It's about starting a conversation. So that's how I got to the second golden rule. It's make a judgment about whether this, not so much that whether it's perfect or not. Clearly, if something is very imperfect and rubbish, you're not going to do well. But it is about starting a conversation. So it needs to be connected. It needs to start a conversation. And then when you get, then you sort of think, well, I want to make sure it's meaningful. So it could be connected. It could start a conversation. But if it has a lacks meaning in terms of the context of this area of research, again, it's rubbish. So it needs to be meaningful. I think the fourth one that it then, you want something that shows there's been effort, real effort put in, as opposed to no effort. So that was the fourth golden rule of effort based. And I don't have the list in front of me, but then I added a fifth one, just to me then to sort of say, well, if someone scores really well on those 5, I'm pretty confident they've got a great pitch because they started a conversation. They've shown it's meaningful. It's relevant. It's to the point, and that's what I'm after in this. That's what I'm really after. That's why I've shied away from what you would think. If we think of as academics, we set exams for our courses all the time, and if there's 10 questions or whatever, we go through and we say, oh, how good was their answer to A? How good was their answer to B? You could do it that way. I prefer not to do it that way. I prefer this, what we'll call the 5 golden rules approach.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I think you explained very clearly the selection criteria.
Yes.
That's really help us, and also the students should know what kind of way that they are going to evaluate. So we also use the rules, the standards, and the norms given by your Inspire Research Network. We also keeping your quality at the national level. So we are not going to deviate from your rules and regulations, standards, and the norms. And we want to send a good candidate from the Sri Lankan perspective for the international pitching research competition, what you call Inspired Pitching Research Competition. It's not an international. Yes. So we try to find, this is our first effort, the initial effort. So we also have a lot of drawbacks from our side, even though it's our responsibility as an academics to introduce the good, valuable concept to the students who are doing the research in the Sri Lankan context. I think both of us joined together and did a marvelous job. I think it's very interesting discussion rather than, explaining the slide. So the things that we can learn a lot of through the question and answers. Once again, I'll tell all the students who join with us, please go to the essential reading, which is at the SSRN, and Robert has explained everything in very detail in that article. Further, he mentioned some video clips. If you are new to this concept, you can go to the video. There are a lot of resources available at the social, what you call Inspired Research Network. It's a good network. It covers the wild countries, I think more than 80 countries. Basically, the pitching competition goes with the 20 countries. It's a huge work. It's very intensive work. You think about the national level too, but you are doing a very great job, a socially responsible job, and you are told you pass to them. And I think this is a good time to appreciate your work from the PIMA perspective. I think the PIMA has done a great job for your initiation, Robert. They voluntarily agreed to sponsor this event. Without having their help, I don't think we can. It's very difficult under this COVID situation. So this is a time for PIMA, the responsible person, to admire, particularly the Robert contribution today. And Dr. Malik is the vice president of the pitching research competition of the Inspired Research Network, and he also did a great job today. And we're both of us willing to do this task in future too, not only today. So, Dr. Sakuntala, would you like to tell us something? Would you like to conclude?
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm totally inspired. Thank you, Professor Robert Pfaff. Where do I start? Firstly, for developing and introducing to the research world such a powerful tool. I think I should start there. That's so value adding, which has streamlined, focused how we should do research, not haphazard, nothing ad hoc, be planned, be focused, be impactful. So that is a great contribution you have done to the world of academic research. Firstly, thank you for that. And you have not stopped with just theoretically, academically introducing, developing something. So many people do that. But you have gone on with great effort and a lot of commitment trying to popularize this, to get this implemented, to get it worldwide known and appreciated. I think that's a great contribution you are doing. And thirdly, of course, to extend it to Sri Lanka, right? We are truly privileged to be a part of this, to start our journey in the proper way, the research in a disciplined, focused, planned manner. You have given us the opportunity to do that. And today, you're spending this much time with us is an absolute privilege. Your energy levels have transmitted all the way from Australia over here. We are all excited and we want to do our best. Thank you very much, Professor, and for answering all the questions in detail. And Dr. Malik, the role you played is pivotal. Behind the scenes, you kept on preempting, you kept on prompting the students where to look for, where the answers are, and all the focal points. We greatly appreciate your efforts. And Professor Atula and Professor Vasanta, we will ever be grateful for the efforts y'all are putting in to bring this program into Sri Lanka and to get all our researchers to align into a professional manner of doing research. Thank you very much for your efforts. It's so much appreciated. And I would like to thank the participants also for being in today. I'm sure you all benefited immensely. You all participated actively with vibrant questions. So I hope you all do all the readings and be prepared and put up a good show in the competition. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Very kind words. I'm so pleased to be partnering with you, and I'm looking forward to great success with the Sri Lankan arm of the competition. So thank you very much.
Robert, there is a request from Dr. Nilakshi. She is a coordinator of Inspire Research Network. She wants to take a what you call the screen photo. I don't know. Dr. Sakuntala, did someone is taking that from your side?
Can I check with the host, Sisira?
Yeah. Sisira?
Can it be done, Sisira?
Madam?
Shall we take a photograph of all participants?
Picture, a photograph.
Dr. Malik.
Sure, madam.
And one thing I want to remind Professor Robert is our keynote speaker in PIMARC conference. So it's a great privilege to see you here before the conference. And thank you very much for your great contribution, Professor. And Dr. Malik also. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. Thank you, everyone.
Please turn on your camera, I think.
I think I will not. I'll not turn on my camera because I'm at home now, and it's not a good idea of turning it on.
Yes, Dr.
Thanks, madam. Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Done, Cicero, did you take?
Cicero, have you taken?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Right.
Professor Atula, would you like to add something into that finally? Professor Atula and myself are doing very hard job regarding this.
Professor Vasant, I mean, now this is very successful actually. PIM, Dr. Sakuntala said all what we want to say. So I would like to thank everybody, and especially Professor Robert and Dr. Malik, as well as PIM for initiating this sponsorship. From our side, we'll coordinate with the international or global competition and try to do our best. Okay. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Well, all right. I wish you well. I will go and see my wife now.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Thanks, Malik. And thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So for the participants, we will be seeing you again with another session, and we will be informing you in due course. Thank you all. Thank you very much. And thank you, Professor Atula, Professor
Okay.
Vasanta.